Welcome to the AAA, also known as the AAA podcast, where we talk everything AA from alcohol to recovery. I'm your host, Joe Van.
Hey, it's Darren. What's going on?
And welcome back to another episode. Today's episode 8, and we will be covering step 11. So, for those at home who don't know how many steps there are, this is going to be the second last episode of us covering the 12 steps of the AA program. Yes. And what that also means is that we're kind of coming to the end of an era of our phase 1, if we want to call it that, of the podcast. This was the introduction, these current episodes we're doing, and then once we pass the threshold of having the specific subject matter of the 12 steps, we can start covering a lot more unique grounds relating to not necessarily AA, but alcoholism in general.
Yes.
We're never going to let go of that name, though. AAA, you kidding me? It's great. It's so Canadian.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes. So without any further ado, we can jump into today's sponsors. And today's sponsors are Poutines, Canada's, nay, the world's greatest drunk munch. Would you agree or disagree?
I love poutines at all times.
Yes,
literally,
yes.
I came out
sober,
eating,
drunk, doesn't matter. There are
Canadian
certain people that think McDonald's is the ultimate drunk munch. They're not wrong, but they're only doing it out of the convenience of locations. If there were more poutine shops...
Convenience, location, and price, essentially.
Is the best.
Price and convenience of location, correct.
But, I mean,
and that's why McDonald's makes the most money of everything, because they have the most locations and they're the cheapest. Exactly. And they spend the most on advertising.
Have you seen the movie The Founder?
Yes.
And
but I saw that. I think I saw it in
the
theaters.
Philosophy of persistence. It was true, but he was an evil son of a gun. And his whole idea where we're not a fast food chain. We're in the business of realtory.
Yeah, exactly.
It's about location. It's not even about the food.
It's always
so
about
cynical.
that. Well, I mean, if you have a good product, essentially, and it's a base, like, for instance, a perfect example is, because, like, for instance, guys, this is what I do for a living, is essentially advertising. Yeah, I work at McDonald's, I flip burgers. Yeah. But, by the way, when I did manage restaurants, anyone that did work at McDonald's or at Tim Hortons or anything like that, they were always like an A+ for me already, ahead of the bunch. Yeah. Because it depended on like how long they worked there, because McDonald's and Tim Hortons are always really busy. Like always. So you know that a person, if a person's working, they're not standing around doing anything. They were like actually working. They got taught things to some extent, anyways. But you know, what is really good about McDonald's is essentially they just put their product in front of everyone, and that is the way people just keep buying it, because it's there and it's convenient, and like you mentioned,
it's the world of business. It's convenience.
That is essentially too, like, you have to think of it as with like drinking and things like that. Convenience is a very, 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 very big factor. Yeah. And
I can only imagine if we were in America. Yeah. Where alcohol is in any variety store, or even the other side of the country. I think BC is the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's like a convenience store has alcohol.
Convenient. It's very convenient for alcohol, and that's why, for instance, I stopped doing like hardcore drugs and went on to alcohol, because it was just convenient for me. I was working around it. I was constantly just stressed out from being in the restaurant industry and being around people that are, let's say, hangry, and they don't get what they want, even to like drunk people, for instance. Like, dealing with your drunk people is annoying in itself, and then you go out and do the same thing. It makes zero sense. Yeah, it's so weird how you like...
The world's greatest hypocrites are people with any kind of compulsion. Because it's of two minds. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but you kind of feel like a Russian spy because you're compartmentalizing. Mm-hmm. There's a sane side of you, and then there's just a switch that's flipped, and all of a sudden you go from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde.
Exactly.
You become the Russian spy, and it's like you got this family, and you just abandon them the second the call comes in, and then you go and do whatever assassin mission you had. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's literally assassin/vampire.
You love someone, and then
it's just like so weird how like things can change so quickly. Like you just, and like the reason, again, going back to McDonald's, is they have that clientele because you're from when you're young, so it's almost like you're born. It's like when we were mentioning about like the vampires and things like that, and being a Russian spy, those things sometimes are hereditary, where it's like you can't control it. It's just you were brought up. Your family may eat McDonald's when you were younger, and now you can't kick it because
Yeah, it's
you
not
were
just the
around
negative.
it when you were younger,
it's
right?
a mentality thing
Exactly.
too.
So
Yeah.
again, every story is different. So it could be a situation where like your parents are drinking when you were younger, and it's like now you're growing up, and it's just the norm because it's the same thing with McDonald's. McDonald's essentially is the biggest company that sells toys. Essentially, they're like the number one selling of toys in the world. Because
I would have assumed Disney or something, but I guess
no, it's McDonald's. It's strange.
McDonald's. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So essentially, they do this by advertising to the younger audience. The kids go like want it, and then they go and
the parents pay for it,
and it's cheap and it's convenient. And it's the same thing like with alcohol, where alcohol is constantly pushed in our faces from the moment we are like out of the womb. We may not physically understand it at points, but you're always around alcohol.
Yeah, you know you have a good time if you drink. There's always that saying, no great story started with, and I had a glass of milk.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember even too when my parents had like a New Year's Eve party, and I came downstairs, and they're like, "Go back upstairs." Like I was young, they're like, "Go back upstairs," and I felt so left out. But everybody was drinking, and I didn't know what it was about. And you just feel so left out. You're like, "Oh, I can't wait till I'm older."
It's a FOMO mentality.
Can't wait till I'm older.
It can manipulate you in subtle ways too.
It's
Absolutely.
crazy, and that's all like McDonald's does. It's just manipulation. It's just the way it is. Oh, there's a toy there, but it's like you're coming there for food. You're not coming there for a toy. You're not coming there for a play place. But most McDonald's toys, giant play places.
Yeah.
Situations like that.
And you know the worst part, even though we're shedding them in the worst possible light we can think of, it's still an advertisement for them. Now it's on people's minds. Subliminal messaging, baby.
Yeah, it's just content everywhere in your face.
Yeah.
Conscious content.
It's nuts. Any press is good press, I guess, as they say, right?
Yeah.
It's weird how that works, but, it's not just alcoholics who have a crazy mindset, Other people who don't have that compulsion can be crazy, too. That's how it works, like crowd mentality, random shit like that, right? Yeah. Like how we want things. We're manipulated. It's like people are so easily suggested.
Yes.
It's weird how any of us function, but it's only through the decency of a graceful God that brings us there.
And that's kind of like going into this topic is conscious content.
Yeah, conscious awareness and contact and the building and growth of your relationship with the God as you see him. So, without any further ado, we will read step 11 and then do our best to be, as diplomatic as possible, but in general to discuss to the best of our ability and to our greatest understanding of the powers of logic and philosophy, how exactly one goes about this step. So, without any further ado, step 11. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. So first, some context. AA was developed in the 1920s to 30s in middle Christian male white-dominated America. So it likes to think that it's non-denominational and proclaims that a lot every single meeting. But in fact, there is a very clear agenda, and an easy example is the fact that monolithic God, specifically the Abrahamic one, which is the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim God, is one specific type. So that's not non-denominational.
Yeah.
Take into account the fact that Hinduism is still a major religion in the world. It's not outdated like the Greek, Roman religions and Nordic religions. It's like those ones are outdated and no one believes them anymore. But people, it's not like the single God is the main God, right?
Exactly.
There are people who believe in multiple gods, and they wouldn't exactly feel welcome going to AA, essentially.
And that's even it
gives you that Christian vibe.
Exactly. And it's almost like it segregates just you into thinking.
Yeah, it's pretending it's not, but it does.
It's a hard topic because at the end of the day, everybody is entitled to what they believe in and what they stand for. But this is even why, for instance, I just feel like a big word here is content and contact. Yeah. Because it's really what you can filter in, right? Yeah. As in the content that we're all everywhere, no matter what, we're being influenced essentially by something or someone. So that's content that's being put into our faces, into our minds, into our bloodstreams, where we have to now recycle that out to contact, where we have to now bring it into the real world and balance that out, where what can you do with that? Like, hey, say for an example, for instance, is you get into a really big argument with somebody, for example, and you insult the person. Say you insult their color of their skin, for instance. So you insult something very intense where
it's something the person can't change.
Yeah,
So
like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, you're in the wrong.
You're completely in the wrong. It's like, what? Yeah. How do you now ask for forgiveness?
Yeah, I don't know.
Right? Like, how do you now
once
go
you
about
realize that you're wrong for doing said obvious wrong thing? Yeah, how do you go about?
That's the contact part.
Yeah, and that's also an external factor. With step 11, it houses, it asks us to constantly renew our understanding of ourselves, right? Like when we're wrong, promptly admit it, as the previous steps have said. So it's like never stop making that list and understanding when you've wronged someone, and then it also has the interpersonal. This is one of those words that confuses me. So, excuse me for 1 minute as I try to go about this. But you know how Interpol is about outer country relations.
Okay.
Interstellar means out of our stellar solar system.
Mm-hmm.
What's up with inter? Like, I get that it comes from like Latin meaning outer, but it's like why do we call it an outer system? Why do we call it an
inter when it's outer? Essentially, it's the opposite. That's what I just remember.
Interpersonal would be outer.
Outer personal, yeah.
So what I mean is inner personal, I guess. So I mean, English, it's a fun language, but like if an alarm goes off, it means that it has activated, or if an alarm is off, it means it's not on.
It's not, yeah.
What are we doing here?
Like you insulted somebody and no alarms went off.
Yeah, or the alarm went off and it means it's on.
Yeah, it's on, yeah.
Anyway, language, it's a fun thing. But regardless, so what I was talking about was to always make sure that you have the contact with the people when necessary, right? When it's not going to bring harm to yourself or others. And then to have this inner personal contact with something that one could describe as God is an important factor. And there's one story that I want to talk about when I was younger, or just, I guess, a series of stories, but a little thought experiment that I'd gone through over a number of years, beginning in my teenage years, was about the idea of God and how one could think about it without it being God, right? Because not everyone has the same beliefs. There are people who believe in multiple gods, there are people who are agnostic, that don't necessarily believe in any one thing, and then there are people who believe for a certainty that there is no God. So how can you describe God in a way that is as diplomatic as possible and can reach across the board of belief to everyone? First, obviously, it's not using the word God, so that's unfortunate, but what are you going to do, right? Okay, this is us trying to tailor this for the anyone within the monotheistic idea range. But when I was a teenager, I would try to think about weird sci-fi cool ways that God exists, where it's a collected consciousness kind of scenario, where all conscious beings, like where God isn't a singular male person, like all of us seem to perceive he is, this father figure. He's instead, or it is instead, an entity. It's like this invisible cloud that's just across the cosmos, and each person or each conscious creature, so even if they're not self-aware, but like every dog, turtle, fly, human, anything that thinks, that bears the light of consciousness, is like a single brain cell to this overarching brain.
This bigger picture, essentially.
Yeah, so we're all connected in the sense that we all share the same thing in common, and that thing is still such a mystery to the scientific community that it could be perceived as just this overarching, like, I am one with the universe, or I am one with God. So with that in mind, you can find an interpersonal relationship with a God of your understanding by being your own personal relationship, or a relationship with your subconscious mind, or the closed section of yourself. Because as we all know, we're not in control of most of the things, right? We're a slave to habit. We're a slave to our impulses.
Automated already for us.
A lot of it is automated. Yeah, we're only in control of 10% of our brain, And sci-fi movies like to have fun with that, where it's like, oh, if we could unlock the rest,
Like,
we
don't
have
watch
superpowers.
Lucy.
No, it's like the other 90% is still being activated at different times, but we're never in any more than 10% control of our just conscious.
We're like
consciousness.
essentially we're all just part of a very big picture, and we're all connected in some way, and you have to be conscious like of what you're bringing, what you're putting in, and what you're putting out, essentially. And I mentioned like in a previous episodes about the situation with Moses. Is Moses the one that splits the water, right?
Yes.
So
he turns a staff to a snake and back.
yeah, that stuff. I remember reading those stories when my aunt was reading me those stories as I'm younger, because I grew up Catholic, and I remember she mentioned as well, like something with like moving mountains and all this stuff. I'm just like, what does that mean? I actually have it on my vision board, which is pretty cool, because it's just essentially a drawing of a mountain with clouds to show that it's a very, very tall mountain. But again, I'm the type of person where I am constantly conscious of what I'm bringing in and what I'm putting out. And when I was drinking alcohol, that shaded that for me. So I wasn't able to make those conscious decisions. So again, the content that was coming in, I wasn't receiving it well. So then it came out negative. And that was the contact that I was making with people. And it was disrupting my little web of living, essentially. So everybody, all those webs and all those like ties and everything, the web is no longer strong. The web is broken. So I can't walk on any of it. Anyways, besides the point, moving forward, you start to realize that you can really turn anything into anything, essentially. And that is what the word conscious, you can make that into really anything it can be. Mm-hmm. So 3 letters, G-O-D, can really mean anything, essentially. For me, it wasn't necessarily looking towards a mountain and just saying move, but it was just more of the aspect of, this is a really big hurdle in my life. It's almost like this alcohol feels like a mountain on my back. Let's put it in let's change the sentence, right? It feels like this mountain I've been carrying on my back for years and years and years, but it's time to move it. So really, it wasn't me really calling on God or anything like this and saying, hey, you got to move this mountain. It was me really realizing that I'm just sick and tired of this weight being carried on me and dragging me on, that I almost have absolutely no choice but to move this mountain, or the mountain will crush me to death, essentially. Mm-hmm. So you make the choice. And I made the choice, and that mountain got moved. That's for damn sure. Mm-hmm. And if I had to move it again, I sure as hell will.
Yeah.
And I say that with confidence, because when you go through something like that, it's like, it's so uplifting to be able to say, I can move a mountain. That's for damn sure.
You do what you felt was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You broke a mental barrier that, yeah, it's one of those things where it is impossible until it's done. It's like life starting. It's like the universe beginning. It should have been impossible, but somehow it happened. Mm-hmm. Somehow there was that just miracle, or of lack of a better term, right? There's this thing that happened that we can't possibly explain, mm-hmm. that was able to switch from one thing
that was
impossible to change to, having an experience
exactly
that you've just been waiting for years without you even realizing, and then finally being able to break through your own mind.
Content, that's
and,
it.
And
the
stopping
contact,
the drinking. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's like, it was something that I didn't have a choice of. I was brought up that way. I was told those stories as a kid. That's the content that they were pushing on me. I didn't have any choices. Can't just say, I don't want to listen to this story. I mean, I could, but it could just be another Bible story that who knows what it could be, right? But that content was given to me, and that's how I perceived that content and made contact. And the contact is, I showed that I can literally physically put effort and time and build this my own mountain, essentially, that isn't weighing on my back, essentially.
Yeah, instead you use it to move obstacles.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you think about it. And that essentially is what I think, what you can put into your own way, anybody listening, that is what the word for me, G-O-D, means.
Yeah, it's this mountain.
It's that mountain for me. Yeah. It wasn't me calling on it wasn't me praying. It was just, but it could be anything. Like, and I had this one, thing where I remember when I was going through a really, really bad time, and it was an analogy of the phoenix, like the dark phoenix. So picture there's this movie was coming out with the X-Men, and I love X-Men. I'm a super huge movie junkie. I'm a super huge comic junkie.
Yeah.
Superpowers have always been my favorite. I've always felt a connection with Jean Grey. She's she's a telepath, so essentially she can like do things with her mind, things like this. There's times where my mind essentially is almost like so clouded with so many voices, where you almost think that it's like there's scenes in like X-Men, like even X-Men I think 2, where the characters change. It's not the same actress anymore, but in X-Men 2 where they're like in the mall and she can't like control her powers and she's just getting all these thoughts in her head.
Yeah.
It's exactly how I would feel, to the point where sometimes I'd go in the shower and I would just be like in the shower just feeling so depressed, so much going through my mind, all these things, where I felt like I was a phoenix rising, where like you almost know what your potential is and where you need to be, but you can't just find that strength and that ability to make that contact to get to that point. And I just know that the Phoenix, when you look at the Phoenix, essentially is you have to lose a lot of things. You have to go through a lot of things to understand where you have to be in order to rise. And that was literally, that's literally how I kind of really got that aspect of like God, kind of like finding that inner strength. It's like a fire in you that isn't lit yet. And so many people, I've heard so many people say, well, I found God and it changed my life. And when I found him, it was like next level. And like, but I use at my everyday things, the things that I'm interested in, the things that motivate me. Motivation creates action, I believe. Whenever you want to do something or you feel the need to be better, it's always you were motivated or you were inspired by something. And that's what I use as my motivation and my inspiration in my daily life to get me through those things. And I just remember sometimes being in the shower and just being like, wow, this is like brutal how I feel so bad. But at the end of the day, when we look at the Phoenix, she had to lose her family. She had to lose her teacher, all these things, where at the end though, she's one of the most strongest mutants.
She is the
strongest mutant. Yeah, I think she's the strongest mutant essentially, and she so much gets taught from her, and you get learn so much. How many people are learning from her and things like this, but all that triumph that has to come and all that fire that has to burn before, you get to see, before you get to see the actual Phoenix rise.
Yeah, it's true. It's one of those things where, it's essentially. I mean, hopefully you don't have to go through hell to get there, but both of us did, and for most people they do. There's a line, and I forget where it's from, but so this isn't an original idea of mine, just so everybody knows. But this is from the ether of the collected consciousness, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. But your identity is fueled by your dreams, and your dreams is the imagination of your current situation. And most people can misinterpret it to great effect. Mm-hmm. They can interpret it to great effect. They can misinterpret it to bad effect, and they can interpret it to bad effect, because the two things aren't exclusive to each other, right? How you take something versus how something is happening to you. Mm-hmm. It shapes us in whatever way we find ourselves. And for a lot of people, they can have an experience that they interpret as them finding God, and so long as it puts them on the right path towards not drinking anymore and being there for their family and providing and living and finding happiness inside themselves, then even though they may have interpreted what was something that was very scientific that happened to them, that they interpreted it in a poetic, spiritual way. Yeah. So long as they were able to find good out of that. Yeah. There are certain other situations where someone has, who knows, some kind of breakdown, some kind of emotional experience or a near-death experience, and they have what they feel like is a religious experience, and it leads them to do very bad things. Because I'm pretty sure something like that happened with your boy Adolf Hitler. He was a soldier in World War I as he was trying to be a painter, and he almost died, but he was saved. And I'm pretty sure that's where this whole idea that he needs to try and make a nation, or whatever he ended up doing in World War II, came from that near-death experience. So that's where the bad thing happens here, right? Yeah. So it's on the person, but obviously we should all try to be our best selves, and that should be the most important thing, not necessarily a philosophy that comes out of it. That's why I always try and know what the actual truth and reality is, instead of making it for myself. So for those who are curious, a religious experience is in fact a moment of higher consciousness in the scientific field, and that is when your brain shuts off certain areas that are normally always activated in your default state. So it shuts off your sense of self, your ego, it shuts off your sense of time, and a lot of these experiences you can get by eating magic mushrooms or by having some kind of psychotropic effect to you, where certain areas of your brain get shut off. And this can happen by complete accident. You don't have to have a near-death experience. You don't have to have an emotional breakdown. And an example I give is, I'm pretty sure that this happened to a doctor who was very famous. He went on a hike, and nothing extraordinary happened. It wasn't like he was completely dehydrated, but his brain just so happened to just snap for whatever reason and calibrate itself into a state of higher consciousness. And it happened right when he was, working his way off the trail and came across a beautiful waterfall that was like split two ways, so there were three trails. And he saw it as the Holy Trinity, and he had this religious experience, and it fundamentally changed his identity, and he became like a born-again Christian. And there are countless other experiences that people have had like this, where they have a complete misreading of what actually happened to them, and all you can ever hope is that it leads to a better thing. It leads them to lead better lives. But it's also important to know what reality is, like what actually happened, the science behind
Just
it.
saying that, but like I very much agree with that. I very much agree with you on that, but that is so touchy though.
It is touchy,
It's so
yeah.
touchy,
I mean,
like, you
by
can't
me
tell
saying that
someone,
now, we've most likely shut off some audience members.
Yeah,
I
already
really
people
hope
are
not.
like,
I want to be diplomatic about this.
Like,
but
as soon as I was saying that for me is what God is, like, I just feel like
it is touchy because it's an emotional subject.
It's not fair.
No, it's not fair.
It's not fair for people just to like, I don't know, just name something that it has no significant or like
That it's not actually true.
Like,
Yeah, and they just claim it with absolute certainty, something that they can't
really
possibly know.
Sad. It's not that it's sad. It's just more of like, I don't want to say that it's sad because like, if you believe in whoever you want, like, just do whatever you want as long as you're living a happy life.
As long as you're not hurting anybody and you're happy. But I think the point is that it'd be nice if, as a society, we outgrew these older traditional tendencies like superstition and things of that nature, because that's not reality. It's not. Reality is a certain way. There is an objective reality. Because there's a term now, like obviously fake news was popularized in 2016, but there's a term I've been hearing kind of late 2019 called My Truth. Okay. And I don't know if you've heard that. It's like in reality TV shows and stuff, but I'm sure it'll become more popularized as time goes on. But it's like there's no such thing as your truth. There's only the truth. So it maddens me so much to hear people say my truth. It's like your experience or your opinion.
Trust me, I hear you.
Is not the same as your truth.
I hear you on that. I can't stand that
There
much.
There is one objective truth of reality,
and that's it.
And that's it. It's facts. That's it.
I agree with you 100%.
Or it's a mystery that can be interpreted, and you can have your opinions about it.
But it's an opinion. There's the difference.
It's not
the truth.
Yeah.
It's an opinion, and that's kind of like, again, this is just opinions, guys. We're just talking opinions.
Yes, that's what we're doing.
We're talking opinions right now. Yes. Okay, so like, don't get it twisted right now. We're not trying to say this is psychology. Like, you believe in whatever you like to believe in, and you do you. We're not trying to insult anybody or say that, but at the end of the day, it's just For me, get this. For me, I was brought up Catholic, and so much of my family I'm very distant from because it's too much. Like, it's too much Catholic stuff, and it's just like it almost saddens me because it's almost like it's very uneducated, but at the same time, like, I can't say that because it's like you're just supposed to like respect your elders and all these things, and like there's so many people that like. It's just, it doesn't make sense how people are so narrow-minded. And I don't want to say that people that believe in that are narrow-minded. It's just, I'm just saying. It's just
that's what makes it so complicated. Because, sorry if that was a little too loud there. Do you know the tale of the, I don't know what the actual name of it is, but the man in the cave, Aristotle's man in the cave, where someone was raised, or there was a series of individuals chained down so they can't move and can't move their head, and they're raised in a cave that's pitch black, and their only source of light or information is this show that's being cast by a fire, a little puppet show on the wall. Okay. Like a projector screen.
I'm so interested.
Of like horses clopping by, and all they've seen is this two-dimensional world being played out to them by some unknown figures casting the fire. And this was written thousands of years ago, so now we would say a projector or something, right? Something like that. And One day, one individual happens to break free. Obviously, he's confused, he's scared, he doesn't exactly know how to feel, but he decides in the end, his intuition tells him to start walking, see if he can depart. And he ends up leaving the cave. He finds a light and he goes towards it. And when he comes out, the real world is so sharp and bright that it almost blinds him and it hurts. But and obviously his initial intuition might be to go back in the cave, but he's out there in the light and eventually his eyes adjust and he sees the real world for the first time in his life. A lot of people have made analogies to the Matrix like that. Like we could all be living as sheep under this sheet, under this lie of the real world. Yeah. The real world is somewhere else. But this individual experiences the real world. And so he sees it and he can see the flowers and he can smell it and he's experiencing so much more than what he had before. And he goes running back into the cave to tell the other people that are still chained up. And they listen to him and they laugh at him, saying, of course, that's not what's, like they see him as a joke, him trying to explain that there's this world outside that's so much brighter and bigger and colorful, that's three-dimensional, and they're just all laughing at him. And it's one of those situations where science has existed for, I think, like 100 and something years, maybe 140 or 160 years, before the traditional material science has existed in human culture across the globe. Science was a philosophy, and philosophers were the scientists of their time. Before we had the technology to create machines that could measure things like the atomic structure of time, the movement of molecules, like cellular life, like how sickness comes to be, that kind of stuff. Before it was just a mystery. So we had to try and think. And so our brain power led to certain schools of thought, and one of them is logic. A lot of people think logic is this inherent thing, kind of like human rights, but it's not. It's a tool that we invented. And it isn't real, it's made up. And it sounds strange to say, but it's like the same with money. It's a story we tell ourselves. And with logic is essentially math of sentences instead of numbers. Okay. And so a lot of that ties into the concept of how we can have this personal conscious contact with God or with ourselves, our deeper selves, is to understand that a bachelor is an individual who's single, or a man who's single. A bachelorette is a female who's single, right? If I loan someone $30 and in the past they've not paid up, they'll most likely not pay up in the future. These are forms of logic that we can follow. And one of them, when it comes to religion, is if we share, and we figure these things out with scientific measurements, but we know now as a fact that we share 99-point-something% of our DNA with chimpanzees. It clearly shows that there wasn't a conscious intent to create human life. That it was by natural selection, which is this unconscious process that created intelligent life. And the fact that we're self-aware of everything around us is a mistake. And one of the ways we can see that is how quickly we tend to fall towards what's most emotionally comforting versus taking the time to try to understand something that can seem really dismal or it can seem very counterintuitive, like the idea that there are higher levels of dimensions other than our own, or that the universe started 13 point whatever billion years ago, and that the Earth is 4 point whatever billion years old. These things that we can't possibly actually think of. Our brains weren't made to be able to withhold these type of concepts. We were made to eat and fight and have families and survive, right? It's like we were built a certain way through evolution, and us having the ability to become self-aware was by chance. And so by the fact that we're pattern-seeking individuals, a lot of people need to have a reason why we're self-aware, a reason why we exist, what the real true meaning of life is. Yeah. And so that's why a lot of people fall on religion. Yeah, it's because true. even if they took the time to see that there are a lot of holes in religions, a lot of gaps in logic, lots of areas that are clearly just we know as a fact aren't true. It's not about the facts, it's about the emotion that it gives the person. Because most people aren't devout, like they don't read the entire thing. They're not scholars in their religion. Most people are there for the community. They're there for the well-being. They're there for emotional comfort, right? It can be like therapy to go to any sort of mass.
Well, I know mine in my family are like diehard. Like my aunt, we went to McDonald's one time.
Nice.
And just for like a coffee, and she was listening to like the readings on her phone, and while we were waiting in line, speaker to the ear.
Wow.
Like, what are you doing? Like, I just don't understand. Like, what? I don't like what you're telling me that you can't find somebody in the real world. No offense, like just like it's not even that to have a conversation, but it's like you're telling me like I don't know, you can't find that same story in a real story situation.
Yeah.
It's like, say the situation was like, okay, I don't know, like when you mentioned like he turned the snake into like, or like the mountains, for instance, it's like you can't live, like he physically didn't move a mountain. Now. Like he didn't do that. That didn't happen. Like he didn't move a mountain.
That was pre-recorded.
He didn't split water. That didn't happen. None of that happened. There's like, that didn't happen. Like it's impossible. That can't happen. So
that this is going to be like phase 2 of people leaving now that we're at this junction, right? If they're not already gone, right? But
mine could happen. Like mine is a story that could happen. Like it's it's a story. Switching. Yeah, it's a story of like putting in content and then making contact of in the real world. What can I like make this of? Yeah. And it's not me physically splitting water and moving mountains physically, but that's what it said in the book.
That's
what it said.
Have you obviously know Ridley Scott, the director? Mm-hmm. Have you heard of Exodus? Film. I think it came out 2013. Have you seen it?
I think actually I have seen it.
Nice, yeah.
I have.
For those listening who are still around and who are curious and who haven't seen the movie, Exodus is Ridley Scott's attempt to try to depict what happened in the Moses story as realistic. He was like, okay, so he didn't turn like
I have seen it. Yes.
It wasn't. He didn't see a burning bush. He there was a landslide where he got knocked on the head, and then hallucinated. Yeah. Where except in this one, it's not.
And I saw the Mel Gibson one too. The Mel Gibson made one where it was like Mel Gibson made one where he made like the real thing. Yeah. I saw that in theaters too, by the way.
That was hardcore. That made a lot of money. I think that's been outdone now, but it's at the time. That was big. People loved it because it was brutal. It was like R-rated violence.
That's the only time, for instance, I've went to the movie theater with that family.
Yeah, no kidding.
Never have I ever been to a movie theater ever in my life with any of my family. Well, like my dad, like it's like okay, my actual family isn't like hardcore, but like my dad's brother, my dad is a siblings of he's 10 in total, 5 brothers, 4 sisters.
Wow, yeah, no kidding.
He's like he's the youngest. He's the second youngest, and he's the youngest boy.
That's wild because on my mom's side, she's the second youngest of I think 7. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting similarities.
Yeah, so like my dad is just like he just like follows the crowd, whatever. Like he doesn't have Bibles and like he's not reading scriptures. He's not literal with it. It's like Christmas time. He's like okay, like Merry Christmas, like you know what I mean. It's like okay, Jesus, God, like he's like that, or like he'll go like to church and like once a year. Around like Christmas or New Year's or something, he'll go to church once a year and then go to the mass, like just to say, okay, like you know, so that he thinks he's getting into heaven, like when he dies or something.
Actually, yeah. So
do you know what I mean?
That brings up a good point. There are certain people that take things too far, which of course you can do. You're just happen to be a very spirited person. You're very enthusiastic.
Do you?
But there are other forms of it, like with sports, where people take it too far, and you know that every single day they're obsessed with listening to sports and following the
video
sports,
games,
and then they get extremely emotional when they watch the game. You have other people that are very focused on race. Because that one I've never understood.
There's so many.
But where people are obsessed, like not in the sense that they're racist, but they're just so focused on race in society, right? Where they're like every single day, it's always something to do with
race. It's a struggle, or it's a fight, or
race.
Something. Yeah.
It can never just not be related. It's like it always has to do with that. And then like another one is what religion, obviously, that we covered, sports, race. Another one is politics. Everything is politics related.
Yeah, and people politics right now is a big one right now.
And then another one is like country. It's like if someone's Italian or something, everything's about Italy and Italian and culture and keeping it alive. Yeah, and like they only talk to other Italians.
I'm working for like an Italian restaurant right now, and it's intense.
The person's just always about Italy all the time.
Everything's just. But like what I don't get,
life is more than.
But what I don't,
subject,
I'm just like I don't understand.
People just fixate and they latch onto one thing, and they're not open-minded to realize the world is very complex and we got a lot going on.
Yeah,
because that's like me. I have never been interested in sports. Mm-hmm. I have never been interested in religion, or I tried to and found that I'm interested in philosophy, where religion just falls short to these questions I have. And then I've never been interested in like business. Like it makes me anxious, business and money.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with business and money. I'm obsessed with that. I'm definitely obsessed with business and money for sure. Like,
and so now as I grow up and as I become more conscious,
and aware
with my life and everything,
and the content that you're bringing in, and
and just how life works in general, it is a part of all these facets. So I'm trying to understand. Sports takes the short end of this, but I try to understand politics and business and finance, these things that have always been the least interesting to me, and that I've tried to avoid as a teenager, where I've only focused on the arts and philosophy and like music and stuff, right? And now I'm trying to open my mind more, because otherwise, if I didn't do this, well, one, I would still be an alcoholic, but two, I would become one of those people that's super close-minded.
They're just so narrow-minded.
Yeah, and I would become like a diehard socialist or something. I'd be like, art is the way of the future, and like, business is just evil. It's like I wouldn't take the time to learn how business works and how business isn't evil, but there's an endpoint to business that we've clearly reached with monopolies, where it's like, now that's evil. And they're not evil, but just unsustainable in a society.
Yeah.
It's like there should be a cutoff point. So it's like capitalism.
Like McDonald's is a perfect example.
Dead ends. Yeah. McDonald's is the perfect
They just make
example.
so much. Like, that's why that's great to start it off with. It's just the content and like the contact, essentially. It's like you're bringing in all this content, but like you don't have to make contact. You don't have to essentially engage in those things, right? But again, it's very, very hard when you're influenced by so many other things, and that's why most of us we got into the alcoholic road, is because we were influenced and we went down. Like, it's just there's a way of life, essentially. And
because
the steps are all proving it here.
Yeah, and it wasn't for me, like, it wasn't just alcohol, obviously, and we've covered this before, where I like, for me, it's definitely a compulsion thing, where I was raised Catholic, which equals just constantly repressing things, whether it's sexuality, or just any form of enjoyment. It's usually always repress it, right? So it's like, because my personality is the exact opposite, where I may or may not have ADD, I don't know, but my attention is drawn to the bright and flashy. So we probably, that's
why
we got the exact same mindset on this.
Sure.
And just the compulsion of like binge, because you don't know the next chance you're gonna get to do this thing. So go all out, whether it's with food or alcohol or porn or cigarettes or it's like any chance I get, I would rather do a buffet, all you can eat. Any chance I get, I would rather buy bulk of candy. Any chance I get, so it's like I had to stop drinking, I had to stop smoking, but if I didn't, there's no moderation, even though I'm self-aware of the fact that longevity is only found with moderation. And well-being is only found because it keeps things important.
Yeah.
When you binge them, it's just in excess. It's like, what's the point anymore when you're doing it this much, right?
Yeah.
And it creates a habitual ritualistic behavior that compulsion can bring out.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of my hereditary disposition towards having a compulsion, or specifically the alcohol addiction, because I definitely think it was specific.
It's just like, it's the bloodline, the vampires, it's part of your bloodline. And
then the other one is the influence. I live in a capitalistic environment.
Everybody's ripping their necks
off. Where the platform...
Drinking blood.
Yeah, the platform is
totally normal.
Not specifically what's just socially acceptable, because alcohol was, even when it was illegal, right? So alcohol has been favored by society, but that it's manipulated specifically by... whether it's Hollywood or the commercials of the alcohol industries.
It's insane.
As the normal thing. It's like their job is to manipulate people to think that it's normal.
Yeah, it's really weird, right?
Like Zippo lighters. The same with...
It's all... It's like literally everything, essentially.
It's strange how it works, but it's
just for
giving a narrative, like, this is how it's always been, and this is how everyone thinks. You want to think this way, too. It's very strange. But, so I took that in. I thought smoking cigarettes was cool, because that's how it was portrayed at my time in the 90s.
Definitely. In the 90s is like
it's finally taken a dip
like,
thanks
I'm
to
like,
vaping,
wow.
But...
And then now the vaping thing, it's like everybody's just jumping on this new thing. I personally think it's kind of weird that people are still smoking, no offense. Like,
well, I don't anymore.
Like,
so no
I used to smoke too. Like, I smoked cigarettes all the time. I used to smoke cigarettes for quite some time, but I just find it's just outdated. like it's outdated. Yeah, it's like they stop it from like you smoking. Like I remember when I went to, for instance, I went to Philadelphia, and I was at the airport, and I just had asked like if I could, where can I smoke?
Yeah.
And they're like, you have to like go through security and like all this stuff. I was like, are you serious? But the outside is just right there. They're like, you can't smoke like anywhere, like on this like platform anywhere.
Yeah.
They like, you have to go completely out of the building, like out of your thing. I was like, what? Are you serious? They're like, yeah, nope. You have to like, and literally, of course, like going through security and all that, it's like hours, like an hour and a half to go through all that. So me to go outside for a cigarette, like how do people do that when they smoke? Like they don't what? And like I remember asking people that when I was working, when they smoke cigarettes, they say, yeah, we just don't smoke. And they say it's hell, like it's brutal, like it's brutal.
Because you're just waiting
They're
seconds
just waiting.
or minutes.
Yeah, and it's like,
what blows my mind, and this is a point of
just quit.
A complete mystery that maybe we can pin on the commenters if they want, the audience listening. But how exactly is it that cigarettes became socially unacceptable? Obviously, the science is there to say that it kills. But nobody cares about alcohol, so why specifically with cigarettes did it become a thing where in the 60s we were smoking on planes and in restaurants to now everyone thinks it's disgusting?
I think
is it because it's outwardly? You smoke out on people?
No, I think it's the times we have a lot more information in our face more often. Like for instance, the younger generation they know that it's put in their, they wouldn't know that smoking is bad, for instance, unless they were to buy a carton of packs that have it. Yeah. But now you can just literally Google why is smoking bad, and it gives you tons and tons of reasons why. Yeah. And people would read that and be deathly terrified and think, oh, I would never ever smoke. And people that do that, why would you do that? Because look at all the information online that you can see that it's bad for you. Yeah. That's the thing. It's we're exposed to so much information, and
it's impossible for the companies to keep their narrative going.
Exactly.
I guess the same is with milk. You know, the
so
big conspiracy about milk.
Exactly. And the only way they could like for instance I love marketing. Like this is what I do for a living. So McDonald's milk is a perfect example of they manipulated people because milk was going down. Mm-hmm. They like, it's not manipulating people, but they make people think that it's healthy for your bones and all this shit. And it's like, it's not really, it's not. It doesn't do anything like that. So you just think, oh, it makes strong bones. So now people start drinking it because they think, oh, it's going to make my bones.
Of society is that it's good. It's part of the health guide.
And it's the same thing with alcohol. I think alcohol is put in a way where they've manipulated us into thinking that it
makes you have fun.
It makes you have fun, and it makes you like, I think for males, more essentially, it's something that's like that's going to be your like outlet.
Yeah, that's going to be your in, whether it's talking to girls or de-stressing after work, or just either courage or relaxation.
And that goes goes like beyond our like where we're brought up and all that. That goes like just in society, like the way the world works. It's just they want, like, think of it as like, how many people does cigarettes kill a year? It's like it kills so many people, but yet they still sell them. It doesn't make any sense, right? So it should be illegal. It should be illegal, but it kills it's the biggest killer. But think of it, how much money they make off it, right? So it's essentially just people that have lack of information and do not want to find any more to it. So it's the same thing with God. We could look up on Google and say these are the facts. But then somebody else can say that's not real. That's just Google. Yeah, I know it's real because I was brought up at this time.
I feel it. Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's a perception of what people think, right? Like, but the facts are there's tar in cigarettes. Like, that's the fact. It doesn't matter what you read or don't read or not. There's tar in the cigarettes. So whether you think, like, it doesn't matter what you think.
And plus, you feel bad if you smoke too many. Yeah, there's so many obvious ways.
It's like, that's just the way it is. And like, if you drink too much, you're gonna get drunk. That's just the way it is.
Sick or get your stomach pumped. Like,
alcohol is the the top killer of the world. But yet, when the Super Bowl goes on, what are the Super Bowl advertisements are $1 million for one. Like Aiden was in one of the Budweiser commercials.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
and it's good for him.
It hits a million. It hits a million people. Yeah. When we're seeing the ad, it's hitting millions of people, and then we're going onto the beach and then seeing the bags that he was in the advertisement for. Yeah. So it's crazy because the people they see the advertisement and then they go and purchase it because they saw the ad. But it's like, why are we even purchasing this at all? You don't need to drink to have fun. You can just, instead of purchasing that, go purchase some fruits or go purchase like something that's going to actually do well for your body. But if you don't do that, then you essentially have to sit there and think about, hey, I'm in this amount of debt, or I'm not in this amount of debt, or this is going good in my life, this isn't going good in my life. It makes you really think, and that's what people don't want to do. They don't want to have to sit and think. They want to be automated. We all want to be automated because it's easy. And the moment that you have to seriously look up and say, wow, I have to move this mountain, I'd rather go back to what I was doing.
That actually brings up a brilliant point that I don't think I've mentioned on here before. But one of the biggest contentions to self-actualization is that people are automated because it is easier.
It's so easy.
Because your brain doesn't have to think about all this stuff. When it isn't thinking about that, you still want to think, though. People still want things. They play video games. They watch movies. People want to have an active experience. But they want automation as well. So it's very strange how it works, because people would rather do anything than meditate, or a lot of people that I've talked to, because they get bored. And it's like the very idea that you can be bored.
Wait, what? What
like
word?
Bored.
Oh, come again?
Yeah, exactly.
I've never heard of that word. Spell it. Can I get it in a sentence, please? Because I'm not familiar
I've never
with that
been
word.
this thing.
I don't
it's
know
by
what that word
theory
means.
alone.
I've never heard of it.
Or at least I haven't for the last 6 or 7 years. Regardless of the whole alcoholism thing, it was just in general, I seemed to find the perfect modem for myself that I would use any time nothing's going on to be creative. Yeah. So obviously that's not the same as meditation. It can put you in a zone where you're completely free. But
what works for you?
Boredom is the reason why people would be like, what? I'm not going to not drink when I go to a party. It's like, what do you mean not drinking and going to a party? You got to drink to have fun. What they're really saying is that I'm so scared that if I don't drink, like, I don't even want to think about how scared I would be. No, or it would be awkward, or I would be bored. It's like, it's not, it might be awkward at first, but then you find activities to do. It's like, you can still play beer pong without drinking. You can still play card games without drinking. Yeah. Everything you do when you drink, you can still do without drinking. Watching a movie, it's like, nothing actually requires drinking.
Nothing. And then it goes back to like all the steps as well too. Like nothing requires drinking at all, but it's just we've been accustomed because we were at a point in our life where maybe
the alternative meant boredom or sadness or uncomfortability.
And the equation was when we're going through that, we actually lucked into having alcohol at that time, and then it changed the way we felt about that. And now that how many years later, that's why we're in the situation of being an alcoholic, because you keep constantly wanting to revive that feeling, bring that up. So you think that essentially the first time you go to parties, you don't drink, it's chilling, it's whatever, but you realize everybody's really drunk and it seems like they're having a good time and you're the only one not drunk, and now am I not having a good time because everybody's drunk? You feel left out, FOMO. So then therefore now you got to feel like you want to be part of something. Again, it goes to who you're surrounding yourself with, the people in your circle, all these things. You're going to go over the steps. We went through them, go over them, and just really audit your circle and understand the people that are in your life are going to contribute to your web. And if you don't filter out that content that's being put in and make physical content and like contact to it, your web's done. Yeah, your web's done. You might as well just like, it's just, you need to make a goal. Look at, like, know that the goal is there and can be achievable. Like, look at it and see, hey, how long is this going to take me? Or don't even do that far. If that doesn't work for you, go one day at a time. Sometimes looking at too far ahead overwhelms people. And take it one day at a time and take it to the way you can take it. And that is, every day you're going to be tested. And that's what we were mentioning about content. Every day you're going to be tested with content, people, so many different things of life pushing you in a certain direction, but it's how you make that contact and how you push it back onto the world. Perfect example is you're in a baseball dome or whatever. Okay. The person is what's the person that has the ball is pitching, is throwing the ball at you?
And that's the pitcher.
Perfect. So you are just standing there and you're not even paying attention. You don't even have a bat, nothing. And they just whip the ball at you. They just whip it at you.
Yeah, that's happened to me before.
There's a few things you can do. You can turn around and say, what the damn hell?
Yeah.
Why the hell did you just throw that at me?
Yeah.
You could pick it up and throw it right back.
Yeah.
Or you can just land on the floor and start crying. You choose what you want to do to the world. That ball is the world kicking your ass right there. coming right at you. You let it hit you. The ball's gonna hit you. It hit you. You choose what you want to do. Do you want to throw that back? Do you want to make change? Or do you want to sit and sulk like a little baby?
Want to know what I did? I sat and sulked like a little baby. That's because that literally happened to me, and I was literally 6 years old. So I have a good excuse for it. I was in the middle of growing up. But yeah, it was me and my friend, the friend that I'm actually hanging out with tonight.
Oh, sweet. He threw the ball at you?
It was like my front lawn. It was a beautiful summer day. I got the bat. He's got the ball. And he just whips it and it gets me right. I forget what happened. I think it hit me right in the chest. And I was like, oh. And then I leave because I'm so upset. I don't even know how to react to it. And then like 5 minutes later, I come back and he's like awkward. He doesn't know what to do. He's hanging out. I'm like, all right, let's go again. He's like, you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm ready to go. He's like, all right, really? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay. So he's like, all right, batter up. I was like, here we go. So I'm ready to go. And he whips it again. It gets me in the gut. And I literally just ran away. I ran to my backyard. I was like, and then my mom comes over. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, Joe, tell him to go home. It was awful.
Sometimes that's what life does, though, right? You gotta run and you gotta hide and you gotta cry.
Run away and you cry. Yeah.
And I'm mentioning, like, if you want to sit there and cry like a baby, you can, because
You're allowed
don't think
to
of
do
it.
that.
Don't
Yeah,
think
just
that.
Try to grow.
Yeah, and to be dead honest, there's gonna be a lot more of those times than there is the time where you're gonna get up. You're going to look at that ball and you're going to throw it back. I'm telling you, you're going to get hit down a lot more times than you think. And it's just to the point where you're tired of getting hit with the ball. It's the point where that ball is hitting you so much that, you know what? It hit me now. It doesn't even hurt anymore. It hits me, hits the floor. I'm picking it up. I'm looking at this ball now. Now I have the ball now. And it's like, it's hit me so much. And it's like, let me throw this ball back. Or let me change the ball. Like, you choose what you want to do with that phrase, essentially. But it's a great analogy for me, essentially, as the world has beat me up so many times. That ball has been thrown at me, hit you in the gut, hit you in the chest. Go home. But at the end of the day, y'all going to go see a movie tonight.
That's right. We're still hanging out.
Right? It's like the world is going to throw so many things at you. And it could be a friend. It could be an animal. It could be anything. So many different things where something can throw something at you and hit you hard, real hard. And for me, it was the loss of my parent. That hit me like it was a curveball. That was a curveball. It had some spin on it and everything. It hit me right in the face. Yeah. Hit me dead. As soon as I hit, I didn't even have time to cry. It just hit me. Landed dead on the floor. Didn't wake up till 2-3 years later. You know what I mean? It's just you. Yeah. But once I did, I looked up and I saw that ball and I said, you know what? I am gonna whip this ball straight out of this park.
Yeah.
Boom.
And what'd you do?
Bam. I can't even see. I don't even know. I didn't even know I was playing baseball anymore. I was like, well, ball gone. I guess the bye. See you later.
Yeah. Wait for it to come back. Yep. I guess. Yeah.
So we'll end it there, right? Hey.
Yeah. Amazing analogy to end it on. And in general, please understand whatever your truth is, whether it be that McDonald's is about fast food or about realtory, you know.
Or advertising. You never know.
What are you going to do?
It is.
Exactly. Yeah. Just remember, poutine aren't just for drunk munch. Poutines are for life.
Oh, I love poutine. So
you know,
good. Ooh, I could have a poutine.
Get out
right
there.
Now. My stomach's growling. I don't know if you guys have heard it in the podcast, but my stomach is growling because I'm
we've
ready
reached
for
the
poutine.
end for multiple reasons. Yeah. But hey, thanks for coming by, you guys. It's been amazing as always.
We love it. We love it. Love it.
Next episode is going to be the last one for the steps. So it's exciting. This is the culmination of our phase 1 for the podcast.
But we're not going anywhere, guys. We're going to be still coming at you hard with all the deliciousness.
Yeah.
And don't be shy to reach out and give us a little feedback. We love the feedback. And thanks so much for listening. If you are listening, if you made it this far, because this episode has been almost an hour.
Yeah, this is another long one.
But
worth it, hopefully.
Yeah, we love it. Hello. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll see you guys next time.